I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Valerie Little, our Associate Director of Athletics here at McKinney ISD. I appreciate everyone's patience as Kellee and I bombarded you with probably 35 emails the last few weeks trying to get information from you. Our sole purpose in doing that was making sure that today ends up being perfect and the masterpiece that all of you guys deserve. Today we are here for a very special day as we're going to honor some very important coaches, teams, and supporters. To get this ceremony started, please allow me to introduce our Director of Athletics, Sean Pratt.
I'm Sean Pratt, Director of Athletics, as Coach Little said. I want to thank everybody for being here today to celebrate our history in McKinney ISD Athletics, and it's a long and storied history. When we decided to start this McKinney ISD Athletic Hall of Honor a couple years ago, we had a couple of objectives. The first was to research and preserve some of our history. I've had many conversations with some of you that have been in McKinney a lot longer than I have. I've been here 23 years, and I've seen it change dramatically, obviously, over 23 years. And it seems like the bigger we get, the easier it is to lose our history and our roots. And so that was one of our objectives, is to kind of go back and research and find that. This Hall of Honors required us to do that. And with the help of Mike Bruck, who will be our MC today, and Kevin McPherson, our Sports Information Director, we've been able to go back and pull those history. And they've done a great job. Anytime anybody is not inducted but nominated, they've gone and found the history of those people and who their coaches were and how the teams were, et cetera. And we're putting that all together and keeping it. Those two gentlemen have done a great job. So it's kind of allowing us, and it will continue to allow us, to go find history, pull it together, and to preserve it for everybody. Our second objective was to build some bridges and relationships between the past and the present. Bringing our past back into the present allows those relationships to be built, and we hope that our past athletes that are coming here today that haven't been back for a while, we're hoping you feel part of our current McKinney ISD family, and that you keep coming year after year and be part of this ceremony. It also allows our current McKinney ISD athletic personnel to bring you back, recognize you, and to appreciate all those who came before us and started this storied historical program. Obviously, the last objective was to recognize the best of student athletes, of coaches, of teams, and even support personnel and contributors to McKinney ISD Athletics. You know, McKinney ISD Athletics is respected across the state and always has been, and that's because of the people that came before us and the things they did, and it was already established long before I got here. I know that. Coaches like Tommy Hudspith, Coach Hudspeth, who will be inducted today, Coach Ron Poe, who was inducted last year, spent 30 years of his career here, and many, many other coaches. And I look around the room, and I know when I got here 23 years ago, I had some great men and great coaches. Obviously, Coach Poe was a mentor of mine and still is today, and in the 8 years I worked for him. But there's Gary Harden and Will Hodges and Coach Hales and Lee Bishop, and those guys that took me under their wing and taught me about the profession when I was young. And I know I was blessed to be around very, very quality men that were in this profession for the right reason and did it the right way and taught me about how to do it. You know, many towns in the state of Texas are kind of known for something. You know, maybe they're a football town, or they're a basketball town, or a baseball town, or what have you. In McKinney ISD, we've been strong in many, many different sports. We're not just one focus area, and I think today's inductees that we're going to recognize today represent that. Along with Coach Hudspeth, we have Jamie Harris, who was not only just a football star, but he was a track star. And I've had many, many people tell me that he was maybe the best football player and the best track athlete that has ever walked through the halls of McKinney High School. We have Annette Hollins, who is a 3-sport letterman, and I've heard many stories about Annette also. Matt Harper, who I was fortunate enough to see his senior year, he was a standout football player and baseball player and later played in the NFL. Tracy Gahan, a girls basketball player that played on one of the state qualifying teams. We have Brittany Lang here, who is still a golfer and is still playing on the LPGA Tour. And then we have a state champion girls soccer team that will also be inducted today. So as you think, I think this group shows that we're strong in many, many different areas, and we take pride in that in all of the different sports that we offer. And along with those great athletes and coaches that are being inducted today, we also have a contributor, a man that dedicated much of his life and career into reporting about the McKinney ISD, or McKinney High School at that time, athletes and coaches. Before we get the banquet started, I want to take some time to thank, recognize and thank some special guests that we have here with us today that play a very important role in our success day in and day out. I want to start with our superintendent of schools, Dr. Rick McDaniel. Dr. McDaniel is finishing his first year as McKinney ISD superintendent, and it has been a great year. There are great things going on in our district under Dr. McDaniel's leadership. And I can tell you, I've thoroughly enjoyed his drive and his support for us to be first class in everything we do. Dr. McDaniel, thank you very much. You know, every great school district has a great school board behind it, and we're blessed here in McKinney to have a great school board that is very knowledgeable and very supportive, and we have some members here today that I'd like to recognize. We have our board secretary, Lynn Sperry. Board member Maria McKenzie, and board member Stephanie Odell. Also in attendance today, we have some members of Dr. McDaniel's cabinet. We have our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Dr. Melinda DeFelice. Our Assistant Superintendent of Learner Support, Susie Woodard. Our CFO, Jason Bird. Our Chief Program Evaluation Officer, Jeff Sanderson. And our Chief Operations Officer, Nancy James. We also have great personnel on our 3 high school campuses. And here in attendance today, we have our principals and our campus athletic coordinators and our athletic secretaries. And we've got some great ones, and they do great things for kids every single day. I'm going to recognize them, and we're going to start with McKinney High School, and I'll have Principal Gordon Butler. The athletic coordinators, Jeff Smith and Debbie Harris. And our athletic secretary, Mary Foyt, back here. From McKinney North High School, I've got Principal Jimmy Spann. I didn't mention Mr. Spann earlier as a mentor. Mr. Spann was actually one of my high school football coaches. I don't think he wants me to get up here and tell you that, but he was actually one of my high school football coaches back in the day. So he was also a great mentor to me. Our athletic coordinators, Mike Fetchy and Shannon Alvarado. And athletic secretary, Cindy Beasley, back here in the back. From McKinney Boyd High School, we have Principal Jennifer Pearson. Our campus coordinators, Don Drake and Kellee R. Bobby. And our athletic secretary, Paula Martin. Special thanks to Paula. Paula helped us last year in our very first year of putting this banquet off with a lot of organization, and she was a big contributor this year, so thank you, Paula. Next, I want to take this time to recognize the Hall of Honor Committee. And if you would, just each member, if you'll stand, I'm going to call your name a little quicker, and just stand and we'll recognize the whole group as once. Mike Bruck, Jerry Crumpton, Glenna Duncan, Gary Harden, Will Hodges, Tommy Hudspith, Scott Johnson, Valerie Little, Kathy Livesey, Kevin McPherson, Ron Poe, and Darla Sessom. I want to thank the committee for dedicating your time and talent to us and coming to the meetings and hashing through some tough decisions. We had a lot of great candidates, and you guys did a great job of getting us these fine inductees today, so thank y'all very much. I want to thank again Kevin McPherson. I mentioned him a minute ago. He's our sports information director, and he put the biographies together. He does a great job. If you want to keep up with McKinney ISD Athletics and go, you know, and this is where we're at today. But go to our Twitter and you find us. Kevin does a great job of going out and finding ex-McKinney ISD athletes and things they're doing and finding stories. And if he can't find a story, he makes a story and he puts that on Twitter. And it's a neat way to keep up with ex-athletes and present athletes. He just does a great job. Next, I want to recognize Brian and Josh Cheek. Brian, Josh, raise your hand for, stand up, please. Yes. Those two guys, they're with Balfour, and they helped last year when we designed this ring that we're going to give each inductee. And if you haven't seen it yet, and I know many of you came up and saw them, if you haven't, I'd encourage you before you leave today to come up and see one of the inductees' rings. They're beautiful. They're awesome. And those guys were great when we were, they brought a great design, listened to us and brought a great design, and then they redid it for us a number of times to come up with just an awesome ring. And guys, we appreciate y'all sponsoring this event and making it special. Finally, I want to thank our athletic office, our associate athletic director who you met a minute ago, Coach Valerie Little. Coach Little does a great job. Many of the inductees and their families have communicated with her over the last 12 months as she kept this thing rolling and organized and moving forward. She does a great job for our athletic department and our kids in McKinney ISD. Our new assistant athletic director, Jennifer Frazier. My assistant, Shelly Ladd. Shelly put a lot of time and effort into this and setting it up and has done a great job, Shelly. We appreciate all your efforts. Our budget manager, Terry Barnes, actually fell ill and had to go home, so she's not here today. And then our event manager, Shannon Frazier, back here in the back. Anytime I get the opportunity, public, to thank those people I just mentioned, I do. And I'll tell you what, they are, not only are every one of them really good at their job, they're really fun to work with every day. And they do a great job for us, and they make me look good and do a lot of things for me personally. And I just want to thank them all publicly. All right, we're excited about getting the program started today, so I'm gonna go ahead and get lunch, heading toward lunch, so we can get to the inductions, which is what we all want to get going. I'm going to begin by bringing Dr. Rick McDaniel back up to give us our invocation, and then I'll hand it over to our MC for the day, Mike Bruck, who will give us some lunch instructions.
You didn't really think you're going to have a superintendent come to a mic and just say the invocation, did you?
Ready to sit down?
Listen, guys, you just listened to Coach Pratt stand up here and thank and thank and thank and thank. At the end of the day, he talked about people making him look good. This guy makes me look good. And I think we need to give him a round of applause for organizing this and bringing it back last year. You know, I've been at McKinney 10 years now. And last year when I came to this event, it was the first time that I really had a sense for the true history, the athletic history that was offered here. And I'm just proud to be a part of it. So thank you for letting me be a part of it, okay? That 10 years went by really fast. It really did. If you would bow your heads and join me in prayer, I'll bless the food we're about to eat. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for the beautiful weather we have outside, just another day on this earth. We thank you for the camaraderie that's offered through events like this. And Lord, I thank you for the people that I am allowed to get to know better as the time goes by in my time here in McKinney. I've enjoyed getting to know all the different people, and I thank you for the historical perspective that is continually brought back to all of this group every year through this event. And I thank you, Lord, for just giving us all that we've been blessed with. We ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our body, and we thank you and give you the credit for all that we've been given. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Mike Bruck. Mr. Bruck is a member of the Hall of Honor Committee. He's also our official Ron Post Stadium announcer. If you've ever been to the football games, this is the guy you're hearing. And he's extremely professional, does a great job at that. And he's the best high school football stadium announcer. I mean this sincerely, in the state of Texas. He works at it, he studies it, does a great job, and he's going to MC the event today. And Mr. Bruck, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you.
We really appreciate your time coming out on a Friday afternoon to really pay tribute to the greats, and everyone today that we're honoring obviously are the greats, and we really appreciate what they did for McKinney ISD to help put us on the map. So we appreciate all that they've done, and we appreciate all that the supporters have done to help make this a very special day and a special event. First up, we're going to introduce former McKinney ISD School Board President and a McKinney High School graduate himself, Robbie Clark.
That tells you how the academic standards have changed in McKinney. You know, I've spoken many times before groups, but I can tell you that I'm probably more nervous about this today than anything I've done. Introducing your high school coach, a man you think so much of, is a pretty daunting task for me. I'd like to take you back a little bit in time for some of you who may remember and some of you who may not. But McKinney's rise as a football power began back in the 1950s when Coach Joe Simpson came to McKinney. Every Monday night in the fall, the MHS cafeteria was packed with boosters, parents, people who didn't have kids on the team or even in high school, to hear what the coach had to say about last Friday's game and why we either won or lost, and next Friday's game on what the opponents had to offer. It was a great time for high school football in McKinney. And to me, it seemed a little bit like a combination of Friday Night Lights, Hoosiers, and Remember the Titans. In the early 60s, McKinney had lost two of its major employers, Texas Textile Mill and the VA hospital. It was a little bit of a down time for the community. We were the county seat. Plano had approximately 4,500 residents, Frisco about 2,500, Allen maybe 1,500. McKinney, the biggest school in the county, and of course we were the county seat and the economic hub of the county. We opened a new high school in 1961 because the old high school had been condemned and torn down. At the same time, a new football stadium, now known as a little political slip, known as Ron Poe Stadium, was built to accommodate the large crowds that came to the games. The stadium seated about 4,500, maybe 5,000 people, and in articles that I looked back through in the paper, there were games where 8,500 people attended the games, people lined around the field. Just was kind of a special time for high school football back in those days. It was the time of the Kennedys, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the threat of thermonuclear war. The baby boomers were in high school, college, and a lot in the Vietnam War. It was just a different time. McKinney, as many schools in the South, was in the middle of social change. Segregation ended in the fall of 1966, and our schools were fully integrated. In the fall of '64, the Lions were coming off of 2 district championships under the leadership of head coach Charles Qualls, who had moved on to North Mesquite, and then at that time a 4A school, the largest classification. At the time, McKinney was part of District 6 AAA, which was one of the most competitive districts in the state. Since 1957, McKinney had won the district championship 3 times, but always contended. In those days, only the district champion went on to the playoffs. So if you didn't win district, you didn't go to the playoffs. In 1964, Coach Hudspeth took over the reins of the McKinney Lions, and his team contended for the district championship, and early in the year beat the number 2 team in the state, the Athens Hornets. A loss to district champion Bonham, and without injured star quarterback Gary Harden, McKinney fell to Lake Highlands, and they were left out of the playoffs. In Coach Hudspeth's second year, the Lions started the season highly rated in the Texas Football Magazine, which was then becoming the Bible of Texas high school football. The Lions finished an injury-devastating season at 9-1, 9 wins, 1 loss, and won the district championship. The only loss was 8-7 to Gainesville. With a thin lineup due to injuries, the Lions entered by district and lost in the first rounds to Weatherford. a team they had defeated earlier in the season. Weatherford lost to eventual state champion Brownwood, coached by the legendary Gordon Woods. The last year of Coach Hudspeth's leadership in McKinney was 1966. Again, McKinney was highly rated in preseason polls at number 4 in the state. By the third game of the season, Hudspeth's Lions reached number 1 in the state polls and stayed there for the rest of the season. After giving up 1 touchdown to 4A Fort Worth Tech and a field goal to Arlington Sam Houston, another 4A school, Hudspeth's Lions shut out every opponent in district, beat Mineral Wells 28-0 in by-district, Ennis 34-0 in the quarterfinals. Monahan scored one touchdown on the Lions in the semifinal game, a loss to the Lions 21-7. Under Coach Hudspeth, McKinney reached the state championship game for the first time in school history. One of the biggest games of the year was the Gainesville Leopards. Both teams rated in the state top 10. As players arrived at the gym on Monday morning, we were greeted by Coach Hudspeth and the staff, taken out to the field to show us where someone had burned a great big gigantic G in the middle of the field, which we took as certainly an absolute insult. The Lions blew the Leopards away that night 26-0. A few years later, I was told by some people from Gainesville that they didn't have any idea who burned that G in the field. So to this day, I don't know, but I suspect that somebody had a hand in that. Coach Hudspeth was a master tactician. He had a solution for whatever the opponent threw against the Lions. He was ahead of his time with tendencies, options, and counters. But more than a great coach, Tommy Hudspeth is a great role model. He truly cared about his players, all of us as individuals. Values he embraced every day were passed on to his players. If you use vulgar language and he heard it or a teacher reported it, you ran wind sprints. But worse, you disappointed him. If you were disrespectful to someone and he knew about it, you were summoned to the coach's office, which was always trouble, and you had to run wind sprints. His staff were teachers, never bullies. Never did they kick, push, shove, punch, or cuss players. Treated everyone with respect, and that's why he is so respected today. He was about team, and he was about you as a person. Tommy Hudspeth proved you can do things the right way, and you can win big. He was about team and you as a person. I heard a great story from Leonard Evans one time during the integration period in McKinney in the fall of 1966. The coaches from Doty High, which was Leonard McGowan and my friend Leonard Evans, they moved over to coach at McKinney High School. Because of some technicality in their contracts, they weren't going to be paid for the 2 weeks of two-a-days prior to school opening. Tommy Hudspeth told the district that if they didn't pay the new coaches, then the coaches at MHS were not going to accept payment either. And after that, of course, everyone was paid. Racial integration was hard for many southern communities. Although I saw it from one side of town, I recall it as being a non-event at MHS. Coach Hudspeth treated every player the same and expected everyone to do it. Because we had teachers like Tommy Hudspeth, McKinney moved forward and embraced change. He's part of the greatest generation and played a significant part in making McKinney the community it is today. There are great football coaches who win a lot of games, and there are great men who not only develop talent, but character. This is a Coach Hudspeth I know. I played for Coach on those 65 and 66 teams. I was amazed at his preparation. He was the kind of man you believed in, soft-spoken, prepared, but when he talked, you listened. The type of person you could not let down because you knew he would never let you down. Coach Hudspeth ended his career at McKinney after 3 seasons, moving on to 4A Longview. He left with a 30-5 record, 86% winning percentage. While I served on the school board in McKinney, a couple of times at school board conventions, we would run into the Sherman administrators and had dinner with them, and we had similar or the same architects at each of the school districts. So we would all go to dinner, and somebody at the table ordered wine, as they always would. But when the wine came around to me, I just put my hand over the glass because I knew I wasn't going to run wind sprints in downtown Houston that night. The coach we honor today has received many other honors. In 1977, he served as president of the Texas High School Coaches Association. In 78, he coached the Texas team in the Texas-Oklahoma All-Star Game. In 85, he was inducted into the Texas Coaches Hall of Honor. He has been inducted into the Weatherford High School Hall of Honor. He has been inducted into the Sherman High School Ex-Association Hall of Honor. And in 2011, he received the Legends Award from the Gridiron Club of the National Football Foundation. Coach Hudspeth has been married to Rena for 62 years. He has 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. Today, he continues to serve the youth of North Texas. This year, the last 2 years, he served Sherman High School as their interim athletic director, still active with youth. Tommy Hudspeth could have been anything he wanted to be, and he is exactly what he wanted to be. Coach Hud spent his life developing character in young people. I'm so pleased to represent the classes of 64, 65, and 66, McKinney Lions football team, introducing our coach and this year's McKinney ISD Hall of Honor coach, Tommy Hudspeth. Coach.
Thank you, Robbie. I don't know whether I can tell the joke on him that I was going to tell after all that stuff. Now, you just need to believe about half of everything he said. But you saw how tall Robbie was. I thought he might have to adjust the microphone here a little bit, and he's put on a few pounds, but if you can imagine, he was our quarterback when we went to the state finals, and so he was small, but he made up for it by being slow, and so it worked out all right. But boy, it's so good to see all these guys here. I want to thank the selection committee. I guess that's one advantage of being on the selection committee. You can get elected sooner, maybe, and get to be honored like this. But the selection committee, to Sean and Valerie and McKinney ISD, what a great honor it is to be honored today like this. God really blessed Rena and me when he allowed us to come to McKinney, Texas. It was a great time to be in the school business. There was some downs, as Robbie mentioned, and then we went on into the Vietnam years and some difficult times. But the late 50s and the early 60s were good times of teaching kids. We had great kids here. We had great faculty, and I'm going to say something else about the faculty in just a moment. But it was a great time to be a teacher and a coach. And these kids here in McKinney were super kids. We loved to be around them, to be with them. And you sponsored a class back then. All the teachers and coaches were class sponsors. And so you worked closely with the kids. And they'd raise money in the junior year with a variety show, and then they'd put on their prom the senior year. And so you really got to know them. And over the years, I guess Rena and I have been invited back to more reunions, class reunions, and now they're getting into their 50-year reunions. We were here in October for the class of 1965's 50th reunion. It's hard to believe that, well, Gary was in that one. That was Gary's class 50 years ago, and here Gary's still teaching and coaching, and he and I had the privilege of coaching together in Sherman and before he came back to McKinney. And it's just so many great memories of things that went on here, and we've been back to so many reunions, and I hope in a couple of years when this class of 66 went to the finals has their 50th reunion that we'll be able to be a part of that. What a great memory that is. McKinney was also good. Our two daughters started the school here. We bought our first house here. It was on Josephine Street right up from the stadium. We paid $8,000 for that house, and I had to borrow $350 from my dad to make the down payment. That's kind of what the pay was, not quite that high, was it, Leonard, back in those years? But it was a great time, and it was here that I got my first head coaching job. We were here for 8 years, 5 years as an assistant, and the last 3 as the head coach. So McKinney has meant a lot to our family for a lot of reasons. About the faculty situation, I decided to go online, get on the McKinney website. There are 13 schools named for teachers that I had the privilege of working with during those 8 years while I was here. Leonard Evans, Jesse McGowan, Jack Fabian, Jack's son, Jack is here. He was on that 66 team. Several of them were coaches like that. Scott Johnson, who's here today. So many of the people, the faculty of that day, have had schools named after them. And so I was privileged to have those people as mentors for me as a young coach, a young teacher, and it was because of people like that that allowed me to become the type of educator that I always hoped to be. I got to tell you one story. One of the schools is named after the English teacher, Ruth Dow. And this is such a funny story. I have to tell it. She was a senior English teacher, and I might say a pretty crusty old teacher. Now, she told you how the cow ate the cabbage, and she was in charge of the English department, and you did things like Ruth Dow wanted. Well, when I first came here, my first year, Tommy Joe Crutcher was a senior, and Tommy Joe was inducted last year in the first class of athletes, tremendous athlete. And Abe Martin was the coach at TCU, and he wanted Tommy Joe to come to TCU, but and Sherman was different then. There was no Highway 75. What you have on the east of 75 now, that was Sherman back then. The rest was farmland, and the Crutchers owned a lot of that farmland. So Abe Martin would go to Ruth Dow and say, well, do you think Tommy Joe can pass college work? And she would talk to him about it, and he would come back again the next trip, and he would just keep on and keep on saying, well, do you really think that he can pass college English? And she finally had enough, and the last time he asked her, do you really think he can pass college English? She said, Coach, do you want a football player or a damn English scholar? And that was the type of faculty and staff that we had here in McKinney. And she was, what a tremendous lady she was. But all these guys, Leonard and Jesse, are here today. And there were 2 other men from Doty High that have buildings named after them. And so many others that we taught with. What a privilege to be around those people. As Robbie mentioned, we did have great years. Those 3 years were tremendous years, and a lot of the guys on that 66 team are here, and what a great privilege to be able to see them. It was something very unusual that we can't do again these days, coaches. You know that you can't shut people out nowadays with the spread formation and all that, but it was the greatest defensive team that I've ever been associated with. After the first, we gave up 9 points those first 3 non-district games, and then we shut out all 7 district opponents in the first 2 playoff rounds, and then gave up 1 touchdown in the semifinals. So we go into the championship game. I got another funny story. It wasn't very funny because we didn't do well in that game. We ran into Bridge City and Steve Wooster, who was an All-American high school player and went on to Texas and won a national championship 4 years later. We fell a little short there, but Norman Scott, who's going to be inducted here in a moment, was our sports writer here. Norman's a great guy. He loved the McKinney Lions. And we had that great defense, and Steve Wooster was averaging 230 yards a game on the ground. Tremendous player. And they'd been to the state finals the year before, lost to Brownwood, and they had everybody coming back, 21 starters, I think, coming back, including Wooster. So Norman Scott wrote, well, he won't make 230 yards against the Lions. And he was right. He made 220. But gosh, what great year that was. And what all 3 of those years. We had so many good players, and many of them are here today. And it's just really an honor to think back over those years. And Leonard and I were talking a while ago, some of the days of integration there, and those were times that have an effect on your life. And Leonard went on to serve on the school board here. Robbie served on the school board. They've got schools named after them, and what a tremendous influence they've had on me. So when I first came here, I was assistant to Charlie Quall, and Charlie and I talked about it, and we said, you know, really, I like to count your record as what these guys have accomplished 20 years after they get out. And I agreed with Charlie. I said, boy, that's really the mark of a great team, if these kids go on and do well. And if you look at the kids on the teams in the 60s and all that came out of McKinney High School, they've gone on to become educators, bankers, real estate, insurance, surgeons. They've done all kinds of great things. So we can really look at that record and say those were good years. So to sum it up, Rena and I have great memories of our time here in McKinney, Texas. And when you have a great coach's wife, when you have 2 great coaches' kids, and you come to a place like McKinney and get good kids to coach, it doesn't get much better. Doesn't get much better. So it's a great honor for me to be standing here today. Thank you so much for doing it. Guys, all you guys that came to be here today, thank you for being here. God bless you. I love every one of you. And thank you so much.
Our next inductee is one of the categories that really makes this really special. We're not just recognizing coaches and athletes, but also people who have contributed. And Coach Hudspeth mentioned our next inductee's name. Imagine a sports writer that's not just writing stories about sports, but it's quality prose. If you've ever gone back and looked, as Kevin and I have, at microfilm from the time when Norman Scott was writing, it's quality writing. He's not just writing scores down and telling you, it is quality work. And so it is fitting that someone that loved the McKinney Lions, as Coach Hudspeth said about Mr. Scott, is inducted and wrote such quality about the athletes, the teams, and the coaches of this school district is inducted. So next up, the son of Norman Scott, Mr. Jack Scott.
Good morning or good afternoon. I've got to follow up on something that Tommy was just talking about a while ago. He mentioned an English teacher named Ruth Dow. She happened to be my teacher. And he called her crusty, and that's an understatement. I remember and when I was a senior, I said, Miss Dell, you taught my dad, didn't you? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, was he a good student? And she said, a whole lot better than you. But my family cannot thank you enough for honoring my dad. It's been, he's been gone now for nearly 20 years, and it's great that people still remember. I can look out here and see a lot of his friends, people that, and my friends too, the same guys that coached and taught his grandsons, a couple of them, one in particular coached and taught me. He probably didn't remember that. But he loved McKinney Athletics, not just for the school, but the community itself. If he was a true sportsman, in my opinion. He was involved in just about everything in the way of sports in McKinney. He and Mr. H.D. Muson really pretty well organized and started the Little League baseball program in this town in the early 50s. He covered sports for 35 years and more. He was a sports editor of the McKinney Courier-Gazette. He worked on assignment for the Dallas Morning News, the Dallas Times-Herald, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the Austin Statesman, even wrote columns for a friend of his in Nashville, Tennessee. He had more than one opportunity to leave and go to another city or another town, but this was his home and he had no intention of leaving. And he stayed there his whole life. I've got, I was thinking when I was having something to talk about, when I was a kid, 10, 11 years old, I got to do a lot of things because I trailed along after him, but I went to a lot of the games. He covered, I was telling somebody earlier, we covered, or I went with him when he covered a game that might be in Blue Ridge, Texas, or on a Saturday he might be sitting in the press box in the Cotton Bowl. So he covered a lot of ground. It gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of prominent people in the field, like sports writer Blackie Sherritt, or cartoonist, a syndicated cartoonist who was one of my favorite guys in the whole world, which y'all may remember. His name was Bill McClanahan. He was a cartoonist of the Dallas Morning News. I got to meet college coaches like Abe Martin, Ralph Neely from Rice. Of course, Abe Martin was the coach at TCU, like Tommy talked about. Abe Martin was quite a character, and even though I was just a kid, he always remembered me. You always remember the people that are nice to you. But he and Dad were good friends and had been friends for many years. I can remember Tommy was talking about Abe asking about Tommy Joe. I can remember, I think even before Tommy, this was before Tommy, Abe was recruiting someone, I want to think it was in Bonham. And he had been talking to the coaches in Bonham, and he called my dad, and he had lunch with him, and he said, Scotty, he said, I know they're telling me this kid can play at TCU, but I want to know, do you think he can play because you've seen him play? And he had that question asked him more than once. Not something he liked to make a judgment call on, but he tried to be as honest as he could. What a lot of people don't realize, he was a pretty good athlete himself. He was a three-sport letterman at McKinney. He had a scholarship to play basketball and baseball at the University in Oklahoma, at a university in Oklahoma, but he turned it down to play, signed a contract with the St. Louis Cardinals, played pro ball for a while. And in the off-season, he worked for Western Union, and that's how he got his start. He covered sports. Back in those days, Western Union covered sports just like the newspapers did. He served in World War II. He was in India, Burma for a couple of years. Got a lung disease that he never really recovered from. But like all other vets of that time, he just came home and went back to work. Never thought much about it. He was a private man. He never talked much about himself. I can remember one year, I want to say it was 1983, but there was a young man here in McKinney that won the MHS award. And so they had an article in the paper about it and a picture of my dad and him. It said Mr. MHS, 50 years apart. And my mom and I said, "You never said anything to us about being Mr. MHS." He said, "Well, I never thought it was important to you guys." And that's just kind of the way he was. He lived to see his grandsons play sports, football primarily in McKinney, covered their games. The last article that I can remember him writing as a guest columnist for the McKinney Courier-Gazette was to report on one of his grandsons who won the National Collegiate Judo Championships in 1991. Some of the things, he always told me that anything that was worth doing was done at the best you could. And through the years, he met a lot of people in the industry, one of which was Grantland Rice. I don't know if y'all know much about Grantland Rice, but he was probably the premier sports writer in the early 20th century. And Dad used a lot of his quotes in his column. And I'll just close with this. He said that one quote that I've seen him use more than once was, "When the one great scorer comes to write against your name, it doesn't matter whether you won or lost, but how you played the game." Thank you.
Next up, our induction of the senior class of inductees, and our first will be Jamie Harris, and he's going to be inducted by the members of his family, his wife Dina, and his sons Justin and Jordan.
Good morning, my name is Justin Harris. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Today, I get the opportunity to share this special moment with my dad. Speaking for the entire family, I can tell you that his parents are extremely proud at how he handled himself on and off the field. But they're more proud of the man and father that he has become. My dad has instilled in us hard work, discipline, and character, and I cannot thank him enough for that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my father, Jamie Harris.
Good afternoon. I'd like to say thank you, Justin, for that introduction. And that was pretty awesome, so I'm glad to have you and my family here to enjoy this one moment. First thing I'd like to do is thank everybody for being here today. I'd like to thank the Hall of Honor Committee for acknowledging my contributions to McKinney Athletics. I am truly humbled by this recognition. It's an honor to represent McKinney during my time here, and I remain proud of all of our team accomplishments. First, I would like to thank the God for blessing me with talent that made this all possible. I would like to thank my parents, Leonard and Polly Harris, who provided me with unconditional love, support, and encouragement. I would not be here today without them, and I cannot recall a time that I did not see my parents or siblings in the stands cheering me on. My father, who was my role model, is not here with us anymore, and I wish he could be here with us today. I know he's smiling at me from heaven. I'd also like to thank my brothers and sisters for being supportive. And I'd always like to share the values and bonds that I shared with Coach Ron Poe and his coaching staff and my teammates. I am honored to be recognized today with such an elite group of McKinney athletes, and it is especially meaningful to me to be inducted to the Hall of Fame with last year's inductees, which also includes the 1979 state championship football team. Lastly, I'd like to thank my wife, Dina. I love you. My two sons, Justin and Jordan. I love you two guys. Very proud of you guys. And I'd like to just say, once again, thanks for the honor. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for all coming out, and God bless you all.
Our next inductee will be Annette Hollins, and the presenter is a former McKinney ISD teacher, coach, and the person that actually started the women's athletics program at McKinney ISD. Susie Hales.
What Mike didn't say was he spent a lot of hours with me and the girls in the gym, and I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for the committee. For those of you who have provided, Coach Pratt, thank you for starting such a program. I know we think of something like this as an honor for the athletes and for the students. I'm here to say to you that as a coach, as a teacher, my life was forever changed when I came to McKinney in 1976. I don't know that Ron Poe knew anything about me. I'm sure he didn't. I was 21 years old. And Title IX had just come on the scene, and he needed a girls' coach. It didn't really matter if she knew anything or not. And so we became friends that July the 4th. That was the day that I was actually hired along with my husband. And I said to him, "Do we have a schedule?" "No." "What sports do you intend for me to coach?" "Well, what sports are there?" "Well, it's not football, Coach Poe. That would be volleyball, basketball, and track." "Well, it's up to you to get a schedule." Now, that was July. Volleyball started in August, basketball in October. We didn't have uniforms. And I did have a belief in a supreme being. So I began to pray. I need help. Now, I don't know if y'all have seen the recent movie that I was told by a young man today that made more money than any other movie in the history of movies. Anybody know what it was? Star Wars. Star Wars. And I said, "So what made that movie so wonderful?" And he says, "About heroes." And I said, "Oh, and who made the heroes?" "Well, the Force." So even though I didn't know anything about Star Wars in 1976, I began to pray for the Force because I knew we were going to need help. So the first day that I met my team, our players, our athletes, I walked into a gym and you could tell they didn't know about me, and I sure didn't know about them. We didn't have tennis shoes. We didn't have a volleyball net. We didn't have standards. There were 2 goals on the end of the gym. And about, if I remember, about 73 girls. And I said, "Hello, my name is Susie Hales. I'm married to Randy. He's out there coaching football. And I hope some of you know how to play ball." That was the first day that I met Annette Hollins. I fussed at her at the table a while ago. I said, "Annette, who wrote this stuff in this program?" "Well, I did." And I said, "Well, it's not right." She said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Annette, you won the state championship. We were on a state championship track team. Now, remember, we just came in 1976. In 1977, that spring, we went to the state track meet and won second in the state of Texas. I would love to say to you, that was because I was a great coach. That was because I had great athletes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about her. And then I'm going to get to basketball, which is my real love. But on the state track team, I was aware that this kid was strong, and she was fast, and she probably could win the state championship in the open quarter. But I needed her on the relay teams. You got more points if you won the relays. And so I'm 21, she's 17. You can see that problem. But she probably had more wisdom than I did, and she said, "Coach, I'll do whatever you ask me to do." Do you hear that? I want you to hear that. Someone at 17 years old who was willing to give up that kind of ego glorification for her team. Now that happened in track. We went ahead and we won second in 2 of those relays and first in the other one for the next 2 years. She went to the regional track meet in all 5 events. Not only could she run, she could jump. What she couldn't do was say no to her coach. So I entered her every time I possibly could. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about basketball. Anybody in this room remember 6-man basketball? Or let me say 6-girl basketball? Because that's what we had. Yeah, it changed in 1978. But in 1976, when Title IX said we got to have a girls' program in McKinney, Texas, we brought in 6-girl basketball. Stopped it mid-court. And you read in your program that Annette scored 55 points in one of those games. Well, y'all, that just meant she had the ball half the time. Can you imagine if she had gotten to play 5-man? Somebody asked me not long ago, well, where did she play college? And I said, oh, at some junior college and then at University of Missouri. Well, why didn't one of the big ones pick her up? Because nobody knew anything about McKinney Athletics except McKinney football. Who was the girls' program and what were they? Now, I want to really tell you, she was a fabulous athlete. I've coached some good ones. She played in college and she went to Europe and played professional. She got a Bachelor's of Science degree. All of those things are important. But my gratitude goes to a young woman. In the fall of the year, beginning the girls' program, Randall and I decided that we would take Annette and Jennifer fishing. Now, Jennifer's her little sister, and she's sitting over here at the table. She wasn't too much for getting in the boat with us. But before we got there, I said to Randall, I need to go to the bathroom. And he said, there is nothing here. We're around the McKinney Square but the courthouse. And I said, oh, that's okay. We'll go in the courthouse. So he stopped. We got out. The girls were on my side, and we flew in the courthouse. I asked where the bathrooms were. The guy told us, and I stopped. I was frozen in my tracks. There was a sign in 1976 that said coloreds with an arrow pointing down. Now, those of you who know me knew it was hard for me not to throw a wall-eyed fit right there. But the 2 girls, thank goodness, had a gracious and strong mother and father. They went right ahead. They went to the bathroom, and I was still standing there looking at the sign. When they came back, they said, what's wrong with you, Coach Hales? I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? What I came to find out, to understand, was the grace and integrity and courage. You know, we talk about Star Wars and we talk about heroes, and I'm 64 today. What I found out is it takes a lot of courage to live life with integrity. To see those obstacles, they were there. These 2 girls on both my sides were there, and they were running and willing to face it. What was I going to do 10 years after segregation? I never even considered it to be a problem, and it was not. It was not. Courage, the root word from courage is cor, which means coronary, which means heart. I was beginning to see what that meant. Perseverance. How do you overcome obstacles? How are we as women, young women, going to deal in a community that was highly football? How are we going to find our way? Perseverance, the willingness to keep going, to not give up. I again would say to you, we were successful, and we were successful. We were 33-7 the first year with no uniforms and a schedule. We got one. We were 30-6 the next year. Now, why that is important, in the next 10 years, we never lost more than 5 basketball games in a year. Why that was important was because of people, women like this young woman that's here today. She was enormously instrumental in saying to the younger women in our program that this is important. It's important to be a heroine. It's important to live your life with integrity, in grace, in courage, and face the obstacles and become who it is that they ask you to be. It is with the greatest sense of honor and respect that I introduce my colleague and friend, Annette Hollins.
Thank you, Coach Hales. That's my coach, y'all. And I had the nerve to tell her that she could only say for 2 minutes, but she said she's going to speak as long as she wanted to. And, you know, I couldn't say anything about that, so thank you, Coach. Also, I'd like to thank the MISD and the Hall of Honor Committee for all the contributors, and also to Coach Pratt and Valerie Little for putting this together. And when I met y'all at the football game, y'all were so nice, and I knew that the process of coming up here and doing all this was going to be made simple. I also like to congratulate all of this year's inductees. I want to thank my family, my friends, all my other coaches, people in the community, and classmates for coming here and sharing with me this honor. I'm not going to pretend that I remember a lot about the program, but I do remember that if I was 17 and she was 21, I know she said her age, and I'm not near her age right now, so, okay. I do remember that when we got the program, that I was really glad and surprised that it was 3-on-3, because I had been playing with guys and growing up, and we was always playing basketball and doing all the things that I was doing in school growing up with the guys. I do remember my first game, the 3-on-3 schedule, the half court, and I guess I got a little excited because I ran past half court. I followed the ball to the other end of the court, and everybody's yelling, "Ned, Ned," especially my sister Jennifer, "Ned, come back, Ned, come back, come back." So I came back over the court, and the game wasn't stopped, so I think everybody just got a laugh out of that. I was a little embarrassed, but, you know, I just had to deal with it. As Coach says, we had success in basketball, and even more in those track years. Now, the reason we had track, because when we got basketball, she said, well, you got to do 2 sports. And I didn't know that much about volleyball, and I don't think she was going to take volleyball as an answer, so it's going to have to be track. And I remember we got a tremendous amount of support from the school, the community, the boys program, Jamie and his brother, and all those people that I knew, and all their men's coaches and everything. So it just felt like, you know, we just couldn't do anything but just give all you could. I remember I joined the band in the middle school, and I joined the band because I wanted to play an instrument, but another reason was I didn't want to go into PE because we didn't have athletics then, and I didn't like PE. And also I knew that joining the band, there was going to be a lot of people there, you know, they could kind of help bring me out of the shell and the quietness because I kept to myself a lot. So those were 3 good reasons. And I remember that after that, I think back on it, it was a memorable time for me because I met a lot of friends. And I remember after we had the athletic program, it was an unforgettable time for me because I met extended family, you know, my coaches and the community and everybody else. I am also here a blessed person by God, and my parents did help shape who I am today. My father's no longer here, but he's in my heart every day. And one thing I want to say is years from now, when nobody in this room or after us will remember my name, I can thank the Hall of Honor for the privilege of making my name Annette Marie Hollins forever. And thank you.
I think even at 64, you can see the intensity that Susie Hales brought to the sideline in basketball. Imagine a first-year teacher volunteering to help out with girls' basketball. I traveled with them, called in their food orders, did their stats, and she wanted those stats on her desk by 8 a.m. the next morning. I said, Coach, I'm just a volunteer. 8:30 is good. Thanks, Coach. Next up, our induction of the athletes from the modern era. And our first athlete is Matt Harper. And the presenter is former McKinney ISD teacher, coach, colleague of mine, Lee Bishop.
I wrote a few things down. I'm glad I did. I wasn't expecting this big a crowd. First, I want to say thank you to Matthew and his family for asking me to come share this moment with them. The fact we're here today to honor and induct Matthew into the McKinney Hall of Fame makes a statement for the kind of athlete Matthew was. Some of his superlatives were he was an all-state football player, he was an all-state baseball player. Somebody already alluded to it earlier today about the football magazine, Dave Campbell's magazine. He was an all-super team member. I've been coaching 32 years. It's hard to believe that, isn't it? 32 years I've been coaching. I'm not going where Susie went. But I was, in my 32 years, I'm going to say Matthew probably more than any other kid I've ever been around, or at least coached. He was a blue chip football player, and I just remember, I guess as a young coach, the thing I remember was the people coming, the football coaches from around the country wanting him to come play football for them. I remember Notre Dame, I remember Florida State. Matthew ended up choosing Stanford University. And if you remember back at that time, they had a head coach by the name of Bill Walsh who had just won several Super Bowls. Matthew stayed at Stanford for 2 seasons. He transferred to TCU so he could get closer to home, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. Both his juniors and senior years at TCU, he was voted All-Western Athletic Conference Defensive Player. Later on, he signed a free agent contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. As I compiled this list, I realized I've not really shared with you what my memories and thoughts of Matthew were in 1991. As a young positional coach for McKinney Lions, Matthew possessed all the traits and characteristics I valued in a competitor. He was athletic, he was competitive, he was coachable, he was a leader, not necessarily with his mouth, but more by his actions. He was confident. I think I really admired that more than anything. And he was confident in a quiet way, if you know what I mean. He was respected by his teammates. He was respectful and understood authority. And for a young guy, coaching him, that was big for me. I even had him in class at one time. We were talking about the class. I think I was teaching sociology, which if you know me, that's kind of funny. But I remember he was a good student. He was likable. He was funny. And then I put a star by this one. I think this is the one that stuck with me the most. He loved his family. And that was big for me because I was just starting my family at the time. You see, at this point in my life, I was just starting my family. I dreamed of having a son. I wanted him to be just like Matthew. I wanted him to be competitive, but I wanted him to be a good guy. Anyway, long story short, Debbie Lee came home one day and said, we're having a baby. My firstborn son was born on October 20th, 1992. I named him Matthew. I would be able to tell him the significance of his name. I would be able to tell him about the man I named him after. I would be able to tell him about what a competitor looks like. I would be able to tell him that he could be great but still be humble. So my wish is that you have an appreciation for the kind of player and person that I had the opportunity to work with as a young coach. And I would hope that you understand the greatest compliment a man can give another is to say, I named my firstborn son after you, Matthew Harper.
I didn't want to get emotional up here because Coach Bishop, first of all, I just want to thank Coach Pratt, Valerie, and Shelley and all the committee and MISD for allowing me to come back and just do this. And all the inductees and their Coach Hales. Man, we should have had her give a halftime speech or something. I got kind of tuned up listening to that. But when we came, we moved to McKinney right before my sophomore year in high school. And I think we moved here because there was 2 golf courses, or 3, and my dad really liked Stonebridge. We've been members at El Dorado. But we went in to see Coach Poe, and I think Coach Crowley was trying to sell us a house back then. Went in to see Coach Poe and walked in, and Tim Wimburn was standing there, and he was 6'3", 245 pounds, and I was about the same height I am now, but I was like 185. And I was like, man, I'm never going to play here. They got huge players in Texas. We moved from Oklahoma, and my dad kind of looked at me and said, anybody I ever knew that was any good, always had people in front of him to push him. And we moved here, and I wish I had some story to tell you guys or something about why or what something I overcame, but, my whole life had great parents, thanks Mom and Dad, and more importantly, anything I did, I felt like had great people always there to help me. Coach Poe, Coach Bishop, Coach Hodges, Harden, Coach Hales, baseball. We won a lot of baseball games, a lot of bus trips. Coach Bean, Pratt, Kraft, Rawson, Lawrence, Smith, all those guys meant a whole lot to me. Teachers, everybody invested a lot. And me, the town, I really appreciate it. I wanted to say one thing about Coach Bishop. We were kind of joined at the hip there. He was my position coach. He coached me as a sophomore. We were together all the time, and and a lot of us, we have a lot in common, the fact that we have giant noses. And there wasn't a day that Coach Hodges or Coach Bean didn't have a comment or a nose joke about us. And like I said, I was very skinny, and we had to get my rear end bigger so I didn't fall over on my face. A lot of that stuff came down, but we endured that together, Coach Bishop. But our wives are here as a testament that we're overcomers, and got beautiful wives to show that. But I can't tell you how thankful I am that God blessed me to come to town, McKinney. There's just so much great feelings here, and the way everybody is treated, not only me but our family, and it just this means a lot. And I just want to thank all the coaches and faculty and everybody that's helped me through life. It's been a great trip so far, and just thank you very much.
Our next modern era inductee is golfer Brittany Lang, also an excellent AP US history student. Not all about sports. And to come up and say a few words about her, Karin Klemm.
Wow, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here inducting Brittany into the Hall of Honor. You know, when I was asked last week about speaking today, I was flooded with memories from the 4 years she was at McKinney High School and played in our program. From all the practices, the tournaments, the road trips, the state tournaments. In fact, her freshman year, I have a funny story real quickly I'll tell you this. She picked out our golf shirts for the state tournament, and they were cute, girly, fitted shirts, and that's probably the first of the kind that the state tournament has ever seen, because we went down there and everybody was talking about our shirts. No one cared how we played, but they wanted to know where we got those shirts. So needless to say, Brittany Lang picked out our shirts from there on out for our state tournament. And if you watch her on the LPGA right now, she's always dressed really cute. So really, as I was thinking about our time together, Brittany, there were two things that really stood out. One was your ability to stay so grounded through those 4 years. Brittany coming into our program as a freshman, we all knew who she was. We saw her out at the golf course, and she received a lot of attention through those years, even as a freshman. And we would walk through the pro shop, and men would jump up wanting to talk to her, give her advice, and she was always so nice. And I would say, okay, we've got to go practice, come on. And she was like, okay, thank you. And she would talk to them and just be so kind to them. And I'm like, I don't know how she can stand that. I mean, she wouldn't get any practice done if it wasn't for someone moving her on, you know. So that, and she practiced with the team every single day. And then after practice, she would practice for 2 to 3 hours after our practice. She could have very easily at any time said, Coach, hey, I've got a lot of homework tonight. I need to do my own practice first. Is that okay? Never once. She went to every tournament, every practice that we had as a school. She never put on like she was too good to be a part of our team. And we had a great team the first 2 years. She was a freshman and sophomore, and the girls loved her. And our team went to state both years. We got second one year, probably because we were distracted by our nice shirts. But the other thing is her passion for the game. And I'm not talking about a normal passion where you just love something. I'm talking about a deep, deep passion where every decision she made throughout the day was whether it was going to help her career as a professional, become a professional golfer. So someone asked me earlier, someone was going over to get her autograph, and they said, Coach, when did you know? Well, I knew after I found out how deep her passion was that she was going all the way. There was no stopping her, and that was during her freshman year as I watched her. You know, as coaches, a lot of times we worry about our kids making some decisions that might hinder their path. I never had to worry about that with Brittany. She was always spot on, always grounded, and her character of practicing and playing and the way she treated people, really, I knew there was no stopping her. I can't believe it's been 13 years since you graduated, but Brittany, I will cherish that time together and those memories. We were back here talking right now. We got in trouble by her husband for a minute because we were just carrying on about reminiscing about the good old days, and I will cherish those memories. It was an honor to be your coach, and I'm just so proud of you and the young woman you've become, and I love watching you on the LPGA, and I know from your character you have more goals set for yourself this year and every year. So I would like to introduce Miss Brittany Lang.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to everybody. Thank you to Coach Klemm for introducing me. And just a little side note, we did get in trouble by my husband talking. It's so good to see her and catch up, but all those guys who came to the pro shop to give me advice, I never listened to one of them, but I was just trying to be nice. But just trying to be kind and stick to my own plan, but that was accurate. I'm super excited to be here to talk to you. A little bit nervous. I've played golf on tour for 10 years now, played in front of thousands and thousands of people, had putts to win tournaments, played on Solheim Cups. I'm definitely more nervous right now than I am playing in front of all those people, so I might need a few mulligans up here, so just bear with me. I love Coach Klemm so much. She's awesome. Those were nice words that she spoke of me, but she's a great person. We had so much fun. She was always in a good mood, always had great energy, made us better, had us doing the right things. And I can't thank her enough for everything she did to help us get better and help me get better. She got me to where I was going. So I didn't really realize till after I had left high school and college and became a pro, I didn't really realize how lucky I was to have her. And I'm sorry that I didn't realize that then, but we were very lucky to have you as a coach. You were amazing, and it's so good to see you today, and thank you for agreeing to be here to do this. Thank you to all the coaches, teachers, staff, board for choosing me for this honor. It's a special achievement. Not only thank you for choosing me, but also for helping mold me, helping me get to where I wanted to be. I know a lot of the people earlier talked about how great the support is in McKinney to mold kids and shape kids, and I was very blessed to be from here and to have you guys help get me to where I'm going. It has great community support in McKinney. I have such passion for McKinney. I'm not born here, but I got here as fast as I could. I got here when I was 10, and you can ask my husband. I sometimes love McKinney a little bit too much. I travel 30 weeks out of the year all over the world, Asia, Europe, all over, and I always dream of getting back here, and I love it here. I love the people. I love everything about it. I'm always telling people about it, and when they announce me on every tee every day from McKinney, Texas, I have a huge sense of passion and pride, and I'm very proud of where I'm from. The rest of my family isn't here today. My husband is. He wouldn't miss it for the world. He's super supportive and helps me achieve my dreams because he comes watch me play at tournaments, and he doesn't make me feel like I need to be getting home. He comes and watches and supports me, and I think you need a spouse like that if you want to really achieve dreams, and I found him. So thank you so much for being here, babe. And my parents and my brother, I owe everything to them. You know, I have such a great family support system, and you know, like Matt was talking about, I seem to always have had the people to help me in life. I've just been very blessed, and it seems like everywhere I go, Coach Klemm, my husband, my parents, my college coach, I just seem to find the right people to help me get to where I'm going, and I love my family so much. You know, they believe in me when I don't believe in me, so that's what you need to be successful, so a special thanks to my family. In closing, thank you so much for having me here. I'm extremely honored to be a part of this prestigious group, and congratulations to all the other winners. Thank you.
Our next modern era inductee will be Tracy Gahan, and our next presenting Tracy, has over 2 decades of service in McKinney ISD, including 2 undefeated district championships, state championship Final Four appearance. Coach Glenna Duncan.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here to talk to you about Tracy. But before I get to Tracy, I want to say something about Annette, because I came in '77 to be Susie's assistant. And I have played more cat, horse, mouse games with Annette on the basketball court than anyone. She would come through the gym, whether it be before school, after school, during lunch, and if we were in the gym, she'd say, "Coach, let's play." And so we did, and we played. And she was a great athlete, and Jenny, her sister, is a great athlete as well. I was glad to see people grab these because I can't see very much without them these days. But it's my honor to introduce Tracy. Tracy will not be here today, unfortunately. She was here during August, during the football game when they introduced the inductees at the football game, but she knew at that time that she would be in Australia at this time and would not be able to be here. But to accept her award, it's going to be her mom and dad who's sitting at the back, and we're appreciative of that. My first introduction to Tracy was through a phone call. Coach Sessoms was coaching at the middle school. She said, "Coach Duncan, you won't believe these little kids I have over here this year." She said, "They can run up and down the court. They can bounce the ball. They don't even fall." She said, "I'm amazed." And she said, "I have this one little girl named Tracy. She's tall and she's skinny. Coach, I think she's going to be a ball player." And that was my first introduction to Tracy. Well, Tracy came on over to the high school, and as you would expect, Tracy started every game from freshman to senior year when she walked up the court on the basketball court. She was exceptional. I cannot tell you the number of times that coaches would come up to me before or after a game when she was a senior and say, "Duncan, is that girl ever going to graduate?" And I was thinking, I hope not. But Tracy helped her team, her sophomore, junior, and senior, junior and sophomore year, to the regional finals. And then as a senior, we went to the state finals. And that was an exciting time for all of our teammates. Tracy was surrounded by a good cast of characters also. Tracy was a pleasure to coach. Her work habits, her attitude, her desire to play the game was just outstanding. She loved it. Of all the athletes I've ever coached, Tracy's mastery of skills led her to be effective in all areas of the game. She was 6 foot, she was slender, she was agile, but she could play point guard if I'd put her there. She could play wing, she could play inside, she could play outside. She just mastered the whole game. But the thing I remember most about Tracy was her rebounding skills. Tracy could get to the ball any place on the court. I don't care where it was shot. Tracy would come up with the rebound. She just had that sixth sense. Her leadership skills was an example through hard work and determination. She inspired her teammates on and off the court. Her outside shot was a swish, but it didn't just happen automatic. It was the product of hours and hours of repetition, of which I am sure her mom and dad back there and her 2 brothers probably rebounded a bunch of those balls, didn't you? What a great support system they are to Tracy and to our athletic program. Through these successes, Tracy developed a passion for the game of basketball that led her to future endeavors in basketball. Tracy was a very accomplished athlete, not only in basketball, but she led her volleyball team into the playoffs her senior year. She ran on the track team her sophomore and freshman years, and she even was on the swim team. Now, I've never heard of that combination, her freshman year. Tracy amassed all kinds of awards, and I'm just going to mention a few of these. Throughout her freshman and sophomore year, she was all district, volleyball, basketball, all of that. Her junior year, volleyball and basketball, Tracy was most valuable player. She was all district defensive player of the year in basketball, first team all regional in basketball, and second team in all state. Her senior, Tracy, volleyball and basketball, was all district offensive player of the year, and in volleyball, she was the most valuable player. In basketball, her senior year, first team all-region, first team all-state, 4A player of the year, BCI All-American, Texas Association of Basketball Coaches All-Star Game selection. Tracy was amazing. After Tracy's high school years, she took her talents to Iowa State University and played for the Cyclones. There she played from 99 to 2002. They had a record of 103 wins to 29 losses. She took her team to 4 NCAA championship berths, placing second in the second round in 2002. She also had 2 Big 12 championship titles. Tracy finished her senior year scoring 1,357 points to rank 13th on the ISU charts. Tracy ranked nationally in three-point percentage and was a contestant in the ESPN three-point contest. Tracy earned the Team Cyclone Award. Tracy continued to excel in her studies, also earning academic all 12 honors. And she was also on the honor roll in high school. During Tracy's professional career, Tracy was drafted in 2002 by the New York Liberty WNBA. In 2003 through 2011, she played overseas for the basketball leagues there. She played in Greece, Turkey, Poland, Ireland, and Australia, of which she is now. To the Gahan family and to Tracy, Coach Sessom nailed it. That little skinny girl really did become a ball player. In conclusion, I went to social media, which is something I rarely do, but I did for Tracy. And these are some of the comments that was said about her. Absolutely one of the best I have ever coached. Trina Uri, high school coach. Besides being an awesome athlete and teammate, I remember Tracy as the team spokesman and a leader. She was calm under pressure and led by example. Her hard work, team cooperation, and encouragement of the younger players contributed to the Lionette spirit. Jody Ferraro, teammate, volleyball and basketball. She was grateful for the opportunity to play and treated her natural God-given ability as that, a gift. Her work ethic was that of someone who chose excellence over entitlement, enabling her to play at the most elite level of basketball. Amy Justice, assistant coach. Tracy possessed a natural talent for the game of basketball, with skills that could neither be coached or taught. I was always a little in awe of how Tracy made playing the game so effortless, even though I know she was working just as hard, if not harder, than the rest of us on the court. She made us all better players in the way she conducted herself out on the court as a silent but effective leader, and I will always be honored to be called one of her teammates. Ann Dotson, basketball teammate. Tracy's freshman year, the basketball season had ended a week before our district swim meet. I got her to swim that week and participate in our district meet. She qualified for regionals in the 100-meter breaststroke. Sam Serio, swim coach. That's an amazing feat there, to be able to go from the hardwood to the water. It was a pleasure to coach you in it was a pleasure to watch you in middle school, high school, and in college, playing the game of basketball. What an inspiration you were to the upcoming players. Jane Klemm, loyal fan. And in conclusion here, this was from Jamie Critchfield, one of her basketball teammates. Tracy and I both moved to McKinney during the 6th grade. Texas was not like the places we had moved from. In Texas, at the end of the 6th grade, girls try out for junior high cheerleader. They just do. But Tracy and I didn't. This was so concerning to our 6th grade teacher that she actually called our parents to make sure we were okay and to explain that we were passing up an opportunity to cheerlead. Of course, cheerleading would have been great, but the following 6 years would have been very, very different had Tracy or I decided to pursue anything but sports. And certainly they would have. Our inductee for the 2016 award is Tracy Gahan.
I get the honor of saying thanks because Tracy is half a continent away. First of all, wow, Coach Duncan, on my behalf, thank you so much for those words. It was nice to just relive that whole time. Those of you that may have known Tracy, she is one that shunned the spotlight. Even though she was out there all the time with her sports and anxious to do a really, really good job in representing McKinney, she didn't care two hoots about the accolades. She just wanted to do the best that she can. So anyway, I do have a very short letter from her that she asked me to read to you. And she made it short, I think, to help me out because I don't need to be up here. Okay. I wish so much that I could be here today, as I am so grateful for this honor and to be recognized by McKinney ISD. First, I'd like to thank Coach Pratt and Valerie Little for making this ceremony possible. Your efforts and dedication to ensuring the recognition of athletes from MISD means so much to all of us. She goes on to thank all the coaches that she's had, Coach Sessom, Coach Justice, just so many coaches, Coach Serial, all through her middle school and high school years. But most importantly, I'd like to thank Coach Duncan and Coach Uri for making my experience playing basketball at McKinney High School so memorable. Without your leadership and guidance, I would never have been able to continue my career both collegiately and professionally. Playing at McKinney High laid the foundation for a career which lasted another 12 years after graduation, and for that I will be forever grateful. It's a good thing she didn't go into cheerleading. And that is a true story. We were fortunate to have such an incredible group of girls while I was in high school, and although we were extremely successful on the court, we were such good friends off the court, which made our successes even sweeter. I won't name all of my teammates, but I will thank the 6 other seniors I graduated with: Kristen, Nikki, Bridget, Hope, Jamie, and Ann. Together we had 4 amazing years that we will never forget. And finally, I have to talk about us a little bit, sorry. And finally, there is no way in the world I would have had the success that I did without the support of my parents. I was fortunate to have a mom and dad that drove my brothers and I to countless practices and games and tournaments. I don't remember a single event, whether it was a volleyball or basketball game or swim meet or track meet, that at least one of my parents wasn't there with me. My dad even spent some Christmas days and many weekend mornings and any other day I needed help at the gym rebounding for me. He never complained, and he never ever told me he didn't have time for me. Okay, this next part in yellow, I'm skipping because she's making fun of me. Okay.
I'll read it.
No. My parents are everything to me, and I'm receiving this award today simply because of them. Thank you. Boys and girls, I'm a teacher from Glen Oaks for many, many years, so I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Tracy would truly, truly be humbled to be with this group of inductees. It's just an amazing honor. I just can't express to her when I go home and tell her what an honor it is. And so thank you very much on her behalf.
Our final induction is a team induction. The second team in McKinney ISD history to bring a state championship to the town. It was in women's soccer, and we have 3 members of the team and their coach. And before I ask them to come up, just let you to know, last week, at Friday, week ago today, when the Lioness defeated Midland in the Frisco tournament, Coach Alex Pantarotto achieved his 250th victory. So let me introduce the members that are here that are going to tell you about that wonderful season. Head coach Alex Pantarotto, Jackie Moseley Young, Kellee Widener, and Chea Rockett.
Hello, my name is Chea Pajak Rockett. Thanks for having me and us. It's awesome. And first thing, I want to tell a quick story. I was born in McKinney, Texas, and moved away when I was 5 years old. We moved to Huntsville, and as many as you know, there's not much to do in Huntsville except for all the prisons. So my mom enrolled me in soccer, and I grew up playing in the Woodlands area. And I remember my mom and dad talking about, as I got older, how there wasn't much of a future for my career, and this was when I was little, in soccer in Huntsville. So we moved back to McKinney when I was going into the 7th grade. And I remember 7th and 8th grade, I played club, and It's funny. I remember hearing through the grapevine when I was going into freshman year at McKinney that Coach Alex did not like people playing two sports. And so I told my mom, I was like, I have to quit volleyball. I have to, I want to be on the varsity team. So I remember quitting the sports and playing and going to the first tryout my freshman year. And I was maybe one of two freshmen to make varsity. And I was so excited, and I can go ahead and thank my parents for moving me back to McKinney, because I wouldn't have the opportunity to be with an awesome group of girls and have our awesome coach Alex and win state. So I wish my parents could be here so I can thank them. But I have never been on a team so close as the team I was on. Even in college, when I went and played soccer at UTSA, I kind of was trying to carry over the closeness of our high school team to our club, and it just wasn't there. So I cherish the memories that we had together. And it was funny because we had so many, nobody really got our traditions. We had so many traditions and rituals, and I remember I ate Wendy's every time before a game, and it had to be, a cheeseburger, it had to be the exact same thing. I remember we made spirit sticks that year. We all decorated the very beginning of that, the year we won state, we all decorated our own spirit stick and put it in a little bundle together and tied it, and that was us uniting each other together. We also made, I think we made shirts every time we won something. We made, district by district, we made shirts every single time. And so now, just like Babes, my mom made a t-shirt blanket of all of the shirts, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, to this day, I still talk about winning the state championship with my teammates, and my husband, I think, gets a little bit jealous, but he will never say it. So, but yeah, it was just, it was such a great time, and I will always treasure those memories that we had together, and especially, winning state and having that medal next to my husband's deer heads at our house. So at least I get something. So thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to thank the athletic department for organizing this and the selection committee. Hearing all these speeches before us, I'm just really humbled and honored to be amongst all these amazing athletes and coaches, so thank you for that. Being a part of this team really did teach me a lot, taught me perseverance. For those that don't remember, we were the smallest 5A school at the time, so we had to play against the Planos, the Allens, and oh my gosh, they were ridiculously stacked. I don't know what they were feeding those girls in Plano, but being 5'2", I was like, this cannot be the right district. Point being is that, it wasn't easy. We had to overcome a lot, and a lot of people, when they think of winning state, it was a 4-year journey. It really was. We're a small town team. We had a lot of obstacles to face, and the other thing it taught me was teamwork. With teamwork, bless you, Alex, for dealing with a bunch of girls and different personalities. Coaching women's sports is never easy. So I will say that, it would have been easy to coast our senior year, having to face the 5As, and we dropped down to 4A senior year. But thankfully, Jack and Chea wouldn't let that slide, so they pushed us every single game, every single practice. And something else it taught me was you can't really get anywhere without a great support team. So Alex, thank you for bringing the passion of soccer, even at work. If something good happens, I say ole or golazo, and people make fun of me. So yeah, a little soccer passion there. And thank you to Mr. Brook. Soccer games would not have been the same without you announcing. I joke with, it was my announcer at Evansville, and I was like, he was like the Morgan Freeman of announcing, just something calming about his voice, at the soccer games. And, thank you to Pocock for always supporting us and believing in us, and also the parents. You don't realize how cold the games are because you're always used to running around in it until you're sitting on the middle benches. So I know it could not have been fun, but thank you for coming out to all the games and supporting us. It really was, like some of the other inductees I already mentioned, but it really did help mold me to who I am today. Helped me launch, my professional career, get to play D1 soccer. It really, truly was an amazing experience, and I'll end with this. So we beat Highland Park in state, and there's a lot of partners at my company that have kids that go to Highland Park. So I always start off with, let me tell you a time when McKinney High School beat your precious little Highland Park Scots. So they think I'm a little sassy there, but I always have to bring it up. So with that being said, I'm extremely proud to be from McKinney, and thank you guys.
Hi, I'm Jackie Moseley, now young. And Kellee, I have step siblings that go to Highland Park. And I like to rub it in their face as well. It never gets old. I think I'll still be rubbing it in their face when I'm 40. I'm not there yet, but man, it's incredibly humbling to be with all of you again this year. And thank you. Last year I talked about that foundation that McKinney set, and just I'm going to sneak in the back next year because I don't think I'll be invited again, because it really is just so humbling, and you realize how big of an honor it is to be here when you see what some of these people have done in this room. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Just echoing what these girls say, it was an incredible team. The community that surrounded us too. A lot of people don't realize what goes on off the field, and I wouldn't say we were all the best of friends either. We were a group of girls who wanted to win very badly, and part of that was parents cooking meals for us twice a week on Monday nights and Thursday nights. Every week we would go to someone on the team's house and have dinner together, and it was such a time of just coming together and enjoying one another, and I think that played a huge part in it. So thank you, parents. I now know how much it costs to feed 20 people. It's a lot. So thank you just for your generosity and your hospitality and your support, and for always being there. But it takes a great coach and a very, very, very special man to coach a group of women, young women, young little girls who want to win very badly but have a lot of personality and a lot of different personalities. And these girls at times probably hated me because I was very intense. And so I just thank Alex for his commitment. He reminded me in the back that he always had to have a hot dog before a game, which I never knew. I mean, I remember, once he said it, but there were so many things and so many times where we had a lot of fun with this man, but nobody believed in us more than Alex did, not even ourselves, and not even Kellee Ham, who told me when we went to 4A, we will win a state championship. And I was like, yes, ma'am, you're crazy. But Alex, I think he always believed it. I think he believed it when we were freshmen, and many of us had the choice whether to go to North or to stay together and to go to McKinney. And it's nothing against North, but we chose to go together as I think it was 7 freshmen at the time, because we wanted to play for someone who truly believed in us. So there were many fun times on the bus where I would hear my name, Jackie. No, I'm coming, to the front of the bus. And I can remember a key moment for our team. There were several of them in the year, but was our loss to Red Oak, who we were clearly better than, but I can honestly admit we were very cocky on the bus ride there. We weren't focused, we weren't ready to play, and after the game, a lot of us would sometimes go home with our parents and stuff, and everybody got on the bus, and Alex called me to the front of the bus, and he was like, what happened to us? I don't know, we didn't play well. But we had a great conversation on that bus ride, and I went to the back of the bus with the girls, and just remember talking to me and like, we are not going to lose another game this year. And everyone believed that and rallied around it. And I probably didn't believe it as much as some of my teammates did, because I can remember over spring break we were practicing to start playoffs. and we were home for spring break to practice. And Kendall Winston was a freshman goalkeeper under me, and we were hanging out in the goal while we were practicing, and I was, hey, Kendall, you know what sucks about making the playoffs your senior year? She said, no, what? I was like, your last game is probably going to be a loss. She was like, oh, I never thought about that. And I honestly thought about it there, and I was like, I don't want it to be a loss. And so we are so fortunate to be the 18 girls who didn't have to lose their last game. And so for that, I'm so thankful. And again, I'm thankful for McKinney. We've sat back there talking about how much we love this place. We love McKinney so much. And we love the community here that for years and years before us had built a foundation of tradition that we were able to enter into and just embrace. And we are so proud that we were able to represent McKinney High School and beat Allen Park in a state championship. Thank you.
Being a young coach, club coach in the 90s, I didn't know that we share athletes, so I just want to make sure that we learned the rule of sharing athletes with the time. And I was, Jeff. No, it is incredible that I arrived in 1994. And in 10 years, we accomplished a state championship. And I couldn't do it without the girls. You know, you coaches, that it takes a special group of people to get all the way. And you have to have some luck, too, along the way. But at the same time, it's all about what we all know what I want, but what they want. So if I manage to convince him that this is what we want, then we're on the same boat. You know, the hardest thing I found while thinking about what I was going to say today is the acknowledgement of those who directly and indirectly contributed to one of the big stories at McKinney that was winning a state championship after 1979, the football team. So, from legendary Coach Poe, and who hired me, and coach and friend Alan Pocock, and took care of the little things on that trip. We used to share periods, and that means that we both coached the boys, we both coached the girls at that time. So it was an incredible experience to share time with you, Alan, and everything we learned from each other during that time. That I have to give you credit for that too, that we both bouncing ideas back and forth. Believe it or not, my wife still has a book of that championship where we were trying to do the lineup against Highland Park. And for those that know Highland Park at that time, they used to show up the McKinney High School gym and check their car keys. You remember that? They used to do that, saying, hey, we're going to beat you. And here are our BMW keys and our Mercedes-Benz keys. And those that have been here for a while, you know that. And so my wife still keeps the lineup that we have with Alan on IHOP table, having breakfast with the sugar packs, and we put the names on the sugar packs, and hey, how about this player right here, and what about this player right there, and believe it or not, we keep that with the names and everything. So it's history for us, and it's a great part of history for McKinney. And also I have to thank Mike Brock, because you guys don't know this, McKinney is blessed with Mike, and there are not many people that have found support like in Mike, and Mike has been in just about every soccer game for us, and he always has the same love for the McKinney Lionettes and for you guys. And Mike, that day, we play on a Thursday and a Saturday, and on Thursday, he came in, he couldn't get a sub for his Friday and stay with us. So he had this old pickup truck, which has mechanical difficulties. And so Mike drove back and forth with this handle going like this, you know, like moving and moving. And so that showed the commitment of the people that were around the program. They help us win. All the way to those who know Joe Cable. That time was a student then, and he was our lucky charm. He is the only one who didn't do anything, but he had to travel with the team, and we thought that he was the key to the success. And we're lucky to have Joe Cable still on campus working with us. But what an incredible story about these Lionettes, these relentless Lionettes that we used to call them. I think you changed the way people look at the city of McKinney, because some of you have expressed that this is a football town. It's not a soccer town, you know, although we have become a soccer town, despite the fact we won 4 state championships, which I feel part of it because we all, as coaches, contribute to that. And so you started something so special that make us a powerhouse, you know. And believe it or not, when people talk about McKinney soccer, they really don't want to face us. They feel the strength of our programs and the coaching staff and the athletes, and I think it's all due to the fact that at that time we recognized that having 3 different high schools was going to be the right thing to do versus Allen, which it doesn't matter how many there are, we still beat them. So, so the truth is that I'm glad that you guys took the decision of having 3 high schools, and I think it really helped tremendously so we can really showcase our athletes. You know, there is a stat that I would like to share with you. Before 2005, our record was 87 wins and 70 losses. Just a very below average team in my heart. However, it did not reflect the inspirational performances that our soccer program was developing. All I know is that since 2005, we have won 68% of our games, which is a tremendous mark in soccer. Knowing that North Texas it's a soccer town. I mean, every school has very good athletes, national team players. Our team was not made of national team players like Highland Park with Elizabeth Ball and Meredith Florence, but was made of players who understood that effort, heart, and commitment to win were the most important factors in winning a state championship. Today's celebration is all about you. It's all about your heart, your effort, your commitment to McKinney High School. It's all about your path to greatness. It shows us that a team like yours will seldom come around, and that's the reason you're being recognized today. I have to thank you guys for having us here. I think these girls deserve a place in the history of McKinney sports by accomplishing a state championship. I know we would like to win another one. I know we always work very hard to do that, and it's the most difficult thing to do because everything has to go right from beginning to end. One bad pass, one bad tackle in football, one extra point will sometimes deflate your dream. But these girls got it. And in our state semifinal, we had these shootouts at the end because we tied 0-0. And we're on the last shootout. Lauren Fabian scores the 5th shootout, and here they come with the other team. And when I talk about luck, probably you coaches understand this. Jackie Moseley makes a save with the tip of her fingers. The ball hits the post and goes out. And sometimes when it's not your day, you know what happens. The ball is going to hit the post and go in. And so that luck determined our faith. In the final championship game, I remember we were on the field warming up, brand new stadium, And I told the girls, where is Highland Park? They were not showing up for warming up. And so I got them all together and say, man, these girls are so cocky, they're not even warm up. They're going to come out thinking that they're going to beat you. And they all bought into that. And I remember they had a very good player on that team that we had to mark. And I said, okay, girls, here we go. Number 12, one of the best players in the nation. What are we going to do? And Kellee Ham says, Coach, I'll take her. And that's the kind of determination that we need of our players, you know. And I remember the first ball she touched, Kellee took her down. And I cannot repeat what she said to this girl. But she said, if you get up, I'm going to do it again. But that, you know, and at halftime, I really thought, and you coaches again, you got your gut feelings that you know something was going to go your way to make it happen. And that game ended up in 1-0, and we just, and we were so elated. And cold because after they dumped that ice on you with Coach Pocock too. But it was an emotional thing for us. And the thing that I told the TV that day was, we put McKinney on the map, back in the map, and from now on, they're all going to remember who McKinney is. And very proud to be here, very proud to have coached these girls. I'm not giving up. We still want to try to win a championship because that's what coaches do. They work very hard to get the best out of their athletes. And I really thank you guys for having us here and to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So may God bless you all. Thanks.
Congratulations to the 2016 inductees. Wow, what a bunch of great stories. I enjoyed this last year, and I enjoyed it just as much this year, hearing the great stories and the connections and the relationships, and it just reminds you why we're in it and why we do what we do for a profession and the difference it makes in people's lives and 40 years later and 50 years later. So I want to thank everybody for being here and invite you to come back in the future. And next year, inductees, we're going to invite you back every single year, and we would hope you would join us. So thanks again to everybody, and travel safe.